Hey everyone, welcome back to Needed Conversations with Ryan and Victoria Cole. So glad you guys tuned in for today's episode as we are kind of wrapping up this month. I can't not believe it's already the end of April and we're stepping into May. Summer is almost here and the kids are almost out of school. It's exciting and not so exciting.
There's a lot of things happening at once, for sure. But it's been a great conversation about mental health. There's so much that we have covered. If you haven't listened to some of those episodes, I encourage you to go back, maybe start at the beginning, especially that episode 1. We laid a lot of groundwork for understanding our mental health struggles. And I think often we put ourselves in a corner with our thinking about mental health and say that it's either medically induced or chemically induced or food induced, or it's all spiritual and demonic. And I think it's a conglomeration of all of it. And you have to use discernment and prayer and trying to understand yourself, how you process information, how you stay at peace. So yeah, go back and listen to all those episodes. We're going to be rounding out this conversation today, talking about kids and mental health. And even if you aren't a parent, you're going to want to listen to this because we're going to talk about generational curses, how our mental health can and will affect our children and how they process challenges in life, their coping skills, among other things. But before we get into that conversation, we always like to remind you that we are a nonprofit ministry and we are able to do what we do because of your support. Whether you give one time a year, periodically, or whether you're a monthly partner, which we love to see because that helps us know what is consistently coming in to support the work that we're doing. All of that is important to see this mission come to pass. So would you consider, if you haven't already, becoming a monthly partner? You can go to moremostforever.com right now and give any amount per month. And that'll also give you access to our closed intentional marriage community where you can jump off of social media and into a safer environment where you can learn more about how to invest in your marriage, what the Bible says about marriage, and you'll get access to date ideas and devotionals and so much stuff. So go there and become a partner right now. And also, we're getting ready to launch our marketing campaign for the Forevermore Marriage Getaway.
We're excited. It's going to be August 30th through the 31st, and we are going to be at Hotel Harkness. We have so many couples that have thoroughly enjoyed this hotel. So we want it to be really relaxing, but a really nice luxury experience, but definitely budget friendly. And also you're going to get a lot of content and a lot of wisdom. And this year's theme is we're going to be talking about communication and how to talk to your spouse effectively. And we're actually going to be launching our book, Needed Conversations, as well.
Yes.
And just lots of things going on, but you want to make sure that you secure your spot by going to moremostforever.com or is the
forevermoregetaway.com. Yeah. It's pre-register right now. The full site isn't there, but you're definitely able to pre-register so you get in. There's only less than 100 spots, so you're going to want to register pretty quickly, and it's only about 4 months away. So it's the last thing that you're going to do at the end of summer. And it's on Labor Day weekend, so you don't have to worry about getting back on Monday and rushing to get your kids back in their routine. It'll give you that breathing room. So it's Friday, it's all day Saturday. We end Saturday night with a wonderful banquet dinner with dancing, and just it's going to be fantastic, along with teaching, worship encounters, prophetic ministry, leisure time with the pool, the biking trails, and amazing food. Spectacular. Last year for our dinner, we had prime rib and just fantastic desserts. And it was just
And they have good
great.
breakfast too. And they don't make you wake up like at the butt crack of dawn to eat it.
Right. Yeah. So you have to show up
actually
before
can-
8 a.m.
You can actually enjoy the time. And we love seeing couples get together on the terrace and have good conversations and really connecting. This is all what it's about as well. Not only connecting with your spouse, but maybe getting to know some of the couples that where you guys can support one another and maybe
Build
connect on a
friendships
different.
with.
Yeah, this is what it's all about.
Well, go to moremostforever.com or forevermoregetaway.com for all of those details. Get your spot right now. Don't wait. Well, I've really enjoyed this first segment that we've
Hmm.
been doing. It's called Reddit Marriage Responses. And if you don't know what Reddit is, it is like an information thread where people post questions. It's like a community board. So people are very real and transparent. And today I want to read one from Hello 1323. Likely this is an anonymous poster. Christian marriage advice regarding moving with kids involved. Advice needed. I'm a Christian wife. My husband is also Christian, but self admits he has no interest in talking, praying, listening to sermons, doing Bible studies with me, praying with me anymore. It was different when we first met. I think he is battling depression. We are in marriage counseling. We have a young child together. The husband struggles with addiction. He sees no issue with the occasional use of illegal mild drugs, I'm guessing marijuana. I said no. He says I'm being controlling, but resentfully stopped for now. He's been living 11 hours away for all of our 3-year marriage due to a job in location A. He just recently got a job where I have lived for years in location B that is technically remote work. He has 2 children from a previous marriage. They live 70% of the year with their mom, 11 hours away in location A, where he used to live and work. And will have 30% of the year with us in location B starting next year since the husband just moved here to location B. I used to live in that location A before moving to location B years ago. I fully understand he wants to live there due to his kids. My mental health, due to geographic location and other people who live there, and slightly physical health, due to other people who live there, would be at risk due to moving back to location A. He knew that before becoming involved with me. I am also incredibly happy with my life in location B. I've suggested a new option, location C, that is halfway between A and B. He doesn't like that idea. I've suggested location C plus owning another house in A so that it can be an Airbnb when not in use and he can spend more time there. He doesn't like that idea. I've suggested a tiny house life or a nomad life, living in campgrounds and sometimes visit near A. He doesn't like that idea. I've suggested getting a house in location A and doing the living apart together thing. He doesn't like that idea. I've suggested we offer up the idea to significantly help financially his first wife and the mother of his other kids possibly move closer to B. She works remotely. He's not interested in seeking out that idea. Obviously, it would be her decision, but he's not even interested in attempting. I've suggested perhaps asking the first wife and the mother of his other kids to look into homeschooling so that the kids' schedules would be more open to stay at both locations more evenly, and I would do the homeschooling here. He's not interested in asking her. I get all these options would put a burden on us financially, but it's not like we can't afford it. I don't know what else to do. Am I supposed to submit as a Christian wife and put myself at great risk and give up everything I love about my life in location B and follow him to location A? Geographically, 180 difference plus mental and slightly physical safety factor, but he feels miserable in location B for the short time he's been here. I don't know what to do. I own my house in location B and am financially independent and also work remotely as of now. What do you think?
I don't know. That's a lot. That's a lot to unpack, especially because this man has a previous, he has an ex-wife and he has children that's tied to that. And you have to, finesse that a lot more carefully than just, this is a sole relationship. We got married, we have kids, we don't have anything apart from that. Now you have to consider that he also has other children that he has to spend time with. And you want that. You want those children to also have their father. That's a tricky situation for sure.
Especially when you involve, previous children and navigating that. I was just counseling with someone the other day about custody agreements cross country and how difficult that can be. And I've walked with people through that before. It's a lot to deal with. And if you can be in the same location, the better. Of course, if the kids are older and more established, it's going to be difficult to get them to transition. Look, examining your situation, you've been married 3 years, right? So He's worked in location A 11 hours away, and I assume he commutes back and forth, probably on weekends, something like
Mhm.
that. So now he's working in location B where you've already gotten roots, you're established. You said you're got a house that you bought yourself and you're financially independent. You really love the community there and so many other things. Now your husband's moving there and he's going through withdrawals. And to be honest, you all as a couple have never been able to acclimate to the normal rhythms of married life. It's
Mhm.
been 3 years, but now you're experiencing what most newlyweds go through at the beginning of their marriage for like the first 6 months or year or even up to 2 years, where you're adjusting to living with each other, seeing each other all the time, the daily routines and habits. Yes, I know that you've spent time together, but with him working 11 hours away and commuting and all of that, now it's really setting in that this is what this life is going to look like. To be honest, knowing men and how we process information, if I were in your position, it sounds like you're driving the conversation and he's still contemplating. Give it a little bit of a breather. I know it sounds, kind of it doesn't seem progressive to just sit back and take the reins off, but I think that your husband is just going through a season of acclimation. His work has changed. Working out in office buildings or whatever he does, and then transitioning to at home work, that's a big transition. On top of now you're in a place that is foreign to you. You're with a wife that you've been married to for 3 years and but now you're in her face 24 hours a day. It sounds like you might do remote work too. That's a lot of transition.
And not only that, I think there's also hesitation because he was previously married. I'm married and I don't know what the issues were that transpired, that caused him to have a divorce. But then I think there's always this hesitation, I think on both ends because she's saying, "Well, I'm financially stable. Like I don't want to like sell my house and move to location A."
Well, and of course she
So there's that
feels
hesitation on both sides, I feel like, well, what if this doesn't work? Or, what if he leaves? And I'm sure he has the same feelings of like abandonment or, I've experienced this before. So I'm definitely more cautious about approaching a second marriage.
Yeah. I think she also feels like gotten a little bit because she says that she claimed that he understood her situation. If it's
Like he
11
knew
hours
that
away,
before.
I
Yeah.
mean, maybe they live in the Northeast and his kids are in the Southeast. Like that is a big climate difference. I know we were just talking with people who the pollen here is a big issue for people who have migrated from either the West Coast or up north or whatever. So I get the challenges that you're experiencing. But again, I think it's a lot more simple than you want it to be. You're suggesting all of these ideas. It's overwhelming, not just to consider financially, but I think men sort of process out loud and his mind wants to take him back to what he's used to. Location A, his kids are there. He's got withdrawals from seeing his kids more often than he did. I think it would be better for you to pu put the brakes on or at least put it in neutral. Give breather for the conversation because I bet if you stop talking about it, he's probably gonna stop talking about it. And he's going to eventually grieve the transitional period and get into a rhythm where he's at, right? And then I think that you should also encourage him to go back often to visit his kids or even schedule some trips to make him feel like, "Oh, this is possible." And again, the custody arrangements are getting ready to shift. By the time you roll into next year and the kids come and visit, that'll soothe that ache in his heart with not seeing his kids.
Hmm.
I don't know why. I just feel in my gut that it's not as big of an issue for him as it is for you. I think men sometimes, this is also why we hesitate to say anything because sometimes we're just processing out loud and we're calculating through and that comes off as insecure to our wife. Like, he doesn't know what he's doing. He has no vision. He has no clarity about where we're going to live, what we're going to do, how we're going to make money. And so she starts, going
Suggesting,
into
yeah.
like solution mode, which is woman is a natural problem solver too. Like that's why Eve was created. We've said this before to solve man's problem. It's not good that he would be alone. So God created him a helpmate. So she's trying to do the thing, but sometimes he doesn't need you to do the thing. And especially as a Christian wife, it's your time to dig your heels in prayer and fasting. And even if you don't have quote unquote Bible studies or prayer time with your husband, you can slip in spiritual things into conversations that also intrigue him intellectually, right? We are not disconnected individuals. Something that's spiritual can also be intellectual. So engage him on that level to talk about the things of God, even if he doesn't feel like doing the routine, pray, do a devotional, go to church, etc. And eventually, he's going to settle into the idea of being in location B. I can almost guarantee it. I may be wrong. I'm glad you're in therapy, that you can really get to the bottom of it. But it sounds to me like he's just in transition. And if you take the brakes off, if you put the brakes on, rather, I think he's going to transition into location B where you're at over time within the next 6 months. And you're going to be surprised. If you keep picking at it, you're keeping it at the forefront of his mind, and he's going to keep looking back. So I would stop talking about it, and I would put it in neutral, let him get acclimated to the new environment. What you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good advice based on the information we're
I
given.
mean, it's hard, but
Yeah.
we're going to respond. Hopefully this helps. Reach out if you need, we could do a one-on-one session. In fact, if you need marriage counseling or mediation, as we like to call it, go to moremostforever.com. You can do an in-person session or a virtual session. We would love to help you. But that was our marriage Reddit response for the day. Well, let's round out this conversation on marriage and mental health by talking about the ramifications of not dealing with your mental health challenges or confronting your toxic coping skills that are dysfunctional because of your childhood or whatever trauma that you've experienced, and all of the things that we've discussed over the last several weeks. Those long-term ramifications are in what you're passing to your children.
Mhm.
Even if you don't have children now, it's important for you to deal with this for the sake of your future.
Because what we always say is your kids don't get what you tell them, they get what you are or who you are. And so they
Yes.
are constantly watching how you're behaving and what you're doing, your reactions, your responses. Anytime like we have a disagreement and sometimes we raise our voices and Mila will step in and she's like, I don't like when you guys do that. And we have to explain to her sometimes mom and dad have disagreements, but we still love each other. And so she always goes like, y'all need a kiss. Because kids want to see resolution. They don't
They
want
worry
your
about parents.
Yeah, they do, even though they may not verbalize it, especially at a young age, like toddler stage, they may actually show it in their behavior, the way they're acting, because they don't have the language for it. There's a reason why certain children behave the way they do. It's because they're asking for attention. There's something that is going on internally. And one of the reasons we wanted to talk about this was because we're also moving. And like a few weeks ago or like a month ago, some of the things that our kids were saying, they were not saying directly. Things like, I'm worried or I'm anxious. But some of the language that they were using told us that I think that they're nervous about this move, which is different for us because we've moved. This is going to be like a fourth or fifth time. And they
Since
were
we've been
so,
married, yeah.
yeah, and they were so young. I think we just kind of picked up and went, and I don't think that it didn't feel like it affected them as much because they were so little, but I think now they are very much aware of their environment and how they have been established and just that feeling of, now I'm gonna be plucked up from where I was and used to moving to a new place, even though I think that they're excited, but I think that there's always these nerves and especially, like, I think Mila, just the way she responds to certain things, or she'll wake up or in the evening, she'll get out of her bed and tell us about what she's feeling or what she's experiencing, and we know that it's actually just because she's nervous about the whole move, and
And I think it's been a benefit that we were able to purchase the house a few months before we were moving and do the
right.
renovations,
It was a blessing for
because they've
sure.
been there several days per week. So it's almost transitioning them. Although in the beginning, Toby was not understanding that.
It's like, "I don't wanna move you."
When we demoed everything, he was like, "This is where we're going." Like wasn't understanding what his room was going to look like when we ripped up the floors and we ripped up the trim and Like the lights weren't working. It just, I could only imagine we had to sit down and say, no, we're fixing this up. And, it's going to look like this. And we started casting a vision, and we have a goal that, his birthday's coming up at the end of May. So on their birthdays this year, we're doing a room makeover. So when we first move in, we're going to bring the stuff that they have and just kind of keep it simple. We've kept the paint very the same pretty much in their rooms, but once their birthday comes around, we're going to do a whole room makeover, paint, and they're getting into, like, Toby's going to have a Lego wall, and it's going to be very cool. So they're getting excited, but it was important for us to remind one another, especially when we see these symptoms in our kids, that this is probably because we're in transition, we're
Hmm.
moving, and that's a lot for a child to process. One of the things I have to remind myself is because we as adults carry so much weight with
Yeah.
our cares that we don't diminish the emotional experiences of our children or act like that they're not significant or not important. I definitely have conversations with both of my kids about appropriate responses. Like for Mila, if she gets bitten by a mosquito, it's like her arm was eaten by an alligator.
Hmm.
So I'm learning that, but at the same time, I don't want to diminish her experiences in life because I'm saying to her, "Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, can you imagine?" And then the whole spiel of, which we've done before, there are kids in the world who don't have anything to eat, or their kids are, so putting that guilt on them isn't always healthy either. And it's a balance. Parenting is so hard because you don't want to go and move in one extreme or the other. It's my mom was telling us about my cousin, my one of my youngest cousins on my mom's side, and I don't know if she listens to this and knows that this is family fodder, but I'm sure she wouldn't mind because we've talked before about how she's in college to be a neuroscientist, which,
Hmm.
as you've listened to this podcast, we love that topic. We've interviewed people on that as well. But her latest research project in school is, I guess they've developed this computer system or this algorithm where, like, over the weeks, they give you a baby at the beginning of the project. Do you remember
Hmm.
my
Yeah,
mom
yeah,
saying
yeah.
this? They give you a virtual baby, and then they throw all different kinds of scenarios at you to see how you would respond as a parent. And then she's evidently calling her mom every so
She's like,
often and
"Mom."
say, "I've got this scenario. How should I respond? How should I input it into the computer?"
No, she said my kid ended up in jail.
Yeah, her kid ended up in jail. At the end of the project, she's like, "I thought I made all the right decisions," and that she's having to reckon with, even as parents, when you feel like you're doing the best that you can, like, it may people
People
don't
will
always
end up,
respond different.
yeah. Yeah, and
I
all
don't know
kids,
how.
no, all kids do definitely respond differently, and the thing is that you're not gonna get it right every single time, but I think the reason why we built up to this episode talking about kids is, if you're not self-aware about your emotions and you're constantly ignoring, then you're definitely going to ignore your kids. And how does that affect your marriage in the long run? Because, if your kid is regressing in maybe their nap time, or their sleep pattern is changing, or they're throwing
Or
tantrums out of the
something's happened
blue,
at school that you're unaware of.
and if you're not addressing that, then they can start waking up, in the middle of the night. You're gonna have sleepless nights. Now you're sleep deprived. Now you're frustrated. Now you're just confused. You don't understand why they're regressing. You feel like you were progressing. They're getting older now. Why are they back into that same stage that you already came out of? And it can just create this big cycle. Now you start pointing at your spouse, like, why aren't you helping? And why aren't you addressing this? And it
But
all becomes like this big old mash ball.
But we also then start passing on our toxic traits to our kids.
Yeah,
For
for sure.
example, like, because they're acting out and they've got these big emotions and for the first time and they're learning how to deal with it. But then we're overwhelmed with our own mental health that we're suppressing and suppressing and suppressing, that we then give them a device. Like, at least this will shut them up or soothe them for a minute and give
Mhm.
us some peace, or like just some space so we can rest or sleep or whatever. So that's a bad thing, to teach your kids that when you're feeling these big emotions, to block it out and suppress and go to technology to distract yourself. Yes, I get on a practical level, like, why you would want to do that, and that's not to shame. Trust me, we
We've
all have
done.
used the tablets. We know what it feels like to be at a restaurant and your kid is just being terrible, and it's like, "Okay, just watch this movie so that we can have peace during this meal." And there are times when that's necessary, when you have friends or you're out and about, I get that. And then on the other side of it, it's like we're ignoring everything that they're dealing with and not teaching them how to confront those big emotions.
And then you have adults that have dysfunctional ways of coping. Now they're stepping into relationships. They're not able to be confrontational, or they're not able to maintain relationships. Or, as we were talking about these past few weeks, about these kids beating up teachers in
Oh,
school. And
yeah.
these teachers coming on and they're like, I have PTSD. I can't go back to work. And I love teaching. I love my students. But these kids are like, they're like demonically possessed. And these parents, when you call them, they're like, so what? They act like they don't care, and this is our responsibility. This is why we focus so much on family, because this is the foundation. Like, we are so quick to point outward as to the president, the congressman, the senate, and all that, why it's their fault what they're doing, and they have their faults. But honestly, if we start looking at our families, we have so much dysfunction. We do not have people that are contributing members of society. We're not raising those kind of kids. Unfortunately, a lot of people are very passive, and it's because we're distracted. We're narcissistic. We have narcissistic tendencies. We're just very self indulgent. We're only focusing on ourselves. We're not taking the responsibility of not only physically providing for our children, but we're raising children that are going to be contributing members of society, that are mentally stable, that understand how to manage their emotions. Like, emotions are there, they're put there for a reason, but they're not there to ignore, as we were taught in the church. And they are also not there to start having anger problems and outbursts because you don't know how to have self control, which is the
Right, when
actual
the
fruit
Bible
of the
says,
spirit. Fruit of the spirit.
be angry, but sin not." That
Right.
means there's a purpose for certain types of anger, but also anger and tears and all of that, that's just a sign of something else that's going on that they're trying to cope with. Like I said last week, one of the things, just our daughter needs routine, and
Mhm.
giving her that the best way that we can right now. It's more challenging. So she's waking up in the middle of the night, but we put a little projector in her room with scriptures that are on the wall. That's helped some, but still, we have to bear through this time and help her transition.
It's
Um,
that, but also sometimes because we are so busy working, I can't say our kids have been eating the best of foods. They probably have not been getting the water intake that they needed. And so I've kind of had to reset myself. It's like, I have to remind my kids to drink water. And you could tell by, like, they have like the dark circles under their eyes, and their mouth is like dry, and so I try to remind them. And even, like, a few weeks ago, I posted, like, a testimony about, like, God really revealing to me when I looked on their multivitamins that I was giving them. I didn't realize there was no magnesium, and I'm telling you, like, there to me, I noticed a big difference in Mila. It's not that it changed her personality, but I think that vitamin deficiency also, for us as human beings, can cause us to be cranky, can cause us to feel lethargic and just be frustrated. And she is that more of that personality where if something is wrong, she gets frustrated about it, that she can't fix it, that she can't control it. And so there's just you have to, like, really find that balance of, I not only have to be aware of myself and what I'm experiencing, but also making sure that I'm not forsaking my kids amidst a busy season like this, and making sure that they're not only taken care of physically, but I pay attention to what they're telling me, what they're experiencing, even if they're not verbalizing fully that I'm anxious or I'm worried about moving. So just catching those little phrases and then communicating that with your spouse and saying, hey, how can we make it feel special? How can we not, like, burden them by this process,
mm,
because it is a lot to carry.
as it relates to our kids, I'm going to say something that I want you to give me grace for, especially if you are in this category. I think daycare culture in the United States of America in particular has really harmed us a lot more than has helped us.
Mm.
And furthermore, I think that we have slowly bought into this deception of two working parents. And I understand that there is all different types of situations and financial arrangements. And I think that there are other ways to solve these challenges. I think that we need to push back against the culture that demands us to hustle every moment of the day in order just to make ends meet. I understand women have been empowered to go into the workplace, and that's great. But also, we have to understand like what that does as far as the balance is concerned. We don't always, as a society, especially, question and say, what are going to be the long term ramifications of this? That, you know, obviously women need to be liberated, but how can we also safeguard from the potential fallout of the family unit essentially being disrupted? In addition to the fact that really families were able to live off of one income very easily, and our middle class is shrinking. All of this is affecting how we're able to parent our children when they're away from us for 8, sometimes 11 hours a day, and
Mhm.
we're only seeing them in the morning, in the evening, and on the weekend. It's like, how much are we able to instill these values in our children? And finally, the last thing I would say to this is I think that we disregard the benefits of multi generational households.
Mhm.
Statistics have shown that grandparents who either live in the home or they babysit often their grandchildren, they have a longer lifespan.
Mm.
And also, the children benefit substantially from that multi generational experience. Yes, it comes with its challenges, and I know there might be situations where you're unable to live with your parent or in-laws, but I think if you're able to incorporate that multi-generational experience, we're very fortunate that my parents are heavily involved. Victoria's mom's involved with the kids, even though she has 18 grandkids or maybe even more.
Mhm.
But it's important that we don't just pass off our kids onto a system and expect the system, whether that be the educational system, the daycare, or even the children's ministry at your church, to raise
Yes.
them and expect them to give them everything they need to become well functioning adults. That is our responsibility. And I think if we are to examine our lives and the things that we give our kids, especially with the mentality of, I want to give my kids what I didn't have.
Yeah.
But what did you have? You
Mhm.
don't want to just give your kids stuff that you're working, spending hours away from them. Sometimes your kids don't need an extravagant vacation.
Mhm.
Sometimes they need a staycation that doesn't cost anything, but
Mhm.
they get you, they get your time, the creativity of making memories together.
Yeah, I think one of my most memorable parts about my father was, we could not do extravagant vacations. We would actually drive 4 hours to the beach in the morning, then, spend a full day there, basically burn, and then we'll drive 4 hours back. We could
I think
not.
you told me that you mistook suntan
No,
lotion
my
for
dad wanted to save
Vaseline,
money.
right?
No, my dad wanted to save money, so he bought Crisco oil
Crisco
or
oil,
or
what was
like,
he thinking?
he was like, "I'm not paying $10 a bottle for SPF for 12 people." So he's like, "Let's just put oil on." Anyway, my dad is intelligent, but for some reason he did not make such an intelligent move on
You
that.
guys look like a rotisserie
Yeah,
chicken.
and then driving with a packed full van together and it's like, "Don't touch me." It's just, it was a lot, but the moments that I do remember with my dad was the moments that he really tried to be present with us. Like, I remember he was trying to lose some weight himself, so he decided to bring us all along, and he would wake us up early in the summertime to exercise, and he would just wake up because he was in the army, and he would wake up and start exercising, and it was just hilarious. Like, looking back at it, it wasn't like an extravagant thing, but I do remember it was just we laughed really hard just seeing my dad work out, and he had that belly, and then he pulled his back trying to do an exercise, and my mom was laughing, and he was trying to bring her along. So those little moments, and that's what your kids want. Like, what is that saying? Your kids don't want presents. They want your presence, like, they want you to be present with them. They want you to play games with them. They want you to watch them do specific things and tell them how proud you are of them. Those things are a big deal to them. And oftentimes we're too fixated on having enough money, enough income to get kids this stuff. I can guarantee you, you guys, I've cleaned my kids' closets with toys probably already within the span of their lifetime like 4 or 5 times, and I have gotten rid of toys, and it's very rare that they actually play with those toys. They normally Mila really enjoys playing cards with Ryan, and I think that that's a great way for her to connect with him, and I know that's something that she's going to have a great memory of because she's very competitive and they have really good conversations together. So, like, she doesn't even focus on, toys, and then sometimes I'll get in there in the room while Toby is trying to be in his imagination and I'll start wrestling him. So I know those things are probably going to be much more memorable to them than us giving them some extravagant gift that they wanted. And
And even the simplicity of closeness physically.
yeah,
When we were looking at houses, I don't think we've ever been square footage people. Like, our goal in looking for a house is to look
buy
for the
more.
biggest house.
Yeah.
Number one, why would we put that financial strain on ourselves? But number two, I've also seen situations where, like, you have 3,000 square feet and you've got two kids, and one's on one side of the house and one's on the other, and they're on phones and iPads, and you're down in your space. And it's just this disjointed family unit. It's like, no, I'd rather have less square footage. Yes, we may be a little crammed in certain aspects, but how can we set it up in such a way that's functional, that is intentional, utilitarian even? It's great that we have yard space and prioritizing those little areas in the home to connect versus areas to escape.
I know every family's lifestyle is definitely different and everybody's needs are different. But like to me, one of the things that I also appreciate my dad, he did like build the house to split rooms, but I think he did talk about, well, you know what? I'm not going to try to build this humongous mansion because my kids are growing up. And they did. It's so quickly. All of my siblings pretty much moved at 16, 17, 18. And we're so close in age that literally every year somebody was moving out. And by the end of it, there was like 2 or 3 people living, so it's like, why would you spend so much money trying to build this mansion to only start looking for something smaller? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
I feel like we're chasing this because our society tells us this is what we need versus how can we, stay connected, give each other space, and maybe do things together that we've never done before. Like maybe we don't need to be cooped up in the house. Maybe we need to do activities outside of the house if our kids are more older. Maybe they need to hang out with friends, or maybe you can bring friends to your house and let them hang out, like not necessarily in the rooms. Tell them to go play outside, go play sports, go enjoy the yard, go hiking and different things. And I feel like that we're just because I think of media and even like games that kids play, we just kind of let them be cooped up inside their
We
rooms
give
like
them
hermit
too
crabs.
we give them too much space for the to be raised by the world. I think the main point that I'm making here when it comes to the mental health of your children, I think we have to take a circumspect look at our lives
Mhm.
and examine, like, what's really important. Have I bought into a lie when it comes to even the American dream of what is important, of what to have, the possessions, the things, trying to keep up with lifestyle, and then we're forsaking we never get that time back with our children.
Mhm.
And we want to make sure that we're there, we're present. And if it means a slightly smaller house, or if it means cutting back on some of these things that are not necessities and being more creative with your resources, do it. And if that will enable you to take a part-time job instead of a full-time job so both parents don't have to work, do that, because your children need you right now to develop as well-functioning adults. They're never going to forget this time that you spend with them. It's so
Mhm.
important. But also, let's look to the Bible. What does the Bible say? There's so many instances in the Gospels where children are brought to Jesus, whether it be demon possessed a child, or a child that had died, and Jesus goes in, 12 years old, little girl, and he raises her from the dead, or whether it be Jesus kind of rebuking the disciples when they were kind of pushing the kids away. And he says, "Suffer not the children to come unto me." Jesus was interested in the
Mhm.
welfare of the next generation, and
Yeah.
so should we. In fact, he even tells us that we should approach him as a child. So, even as it relates to our mental health, there's a lot that we can learn from our kids
Yeah.
as we're helping them to process. It is good reminders of how we should be processing our own weights and challenges more healthy, in a more healthy way. But one of the scriptures that just came to mind was in Mark chapter 9. It's an instance with Jesus. Let's start at verse 14 in Mark chapter 9. It says, when they returned to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd surrounding them, and some teachers of religious law were arguing with them. When the crowd saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with awe and they ran to greet him. What is all this arguing about? Jesus said. One of the men in the crowd spoke up and said, Teacher, I brought my son so you could heal him. He is possessed by an evil spirit that won't let him talk. And whenever the spirit seizes him, it throws him violently to the ground. Then he foams at the mouth and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast out the evil spirit, but they couldn't do it. Jesus said to them, you faithless people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy to me. So they brought the boy. But when the evil spirit saw Jesus, it threw a child into a violent convulsion, and he fell to the ground, writhing and foaming at the mouth. How long has this been happening? Jesus asked the boy's father. He replied, since he was a little boy. The spirit often throws him into the fire or into water, trying to kill him. Have mercy on us and help us if you can. What do you mean, if I can? Jesus asked. Anything is possible if a person believes. The father instantly cried out, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief.
Mm.
When Jesus saw the crowd of onlookers was growing, he rebuked the evil spirit. Listen, you spirit that makes this boy unable to hear and speak, he said, I command you to come out of this child and never enter him again. Then the spirit screamed and threw the boy into another violent convulsion and left him. The boy appeared to be dead. A murmur ran through the crowd as people said, he's dead. But Jesus took him by the hand and helped him to his feet, and he stood up. Afterward, when Jesus was alone at the house with his disciples, they asked him, why couldn't we cast out this evil spirit? Jesus replied, this kind can be cast out only by prayer. Other translations say prayer and fasting.
Mm.
There's so much here to unpack.
Yeah.
Number one, that this father, with such desperation, bringing his child to Jesus. I'm not saying your child is demon possessed,
Yeah.
but I'm also not saying that there isn't an evil component to it. The devil is at work in subtle ways and sometimes not so subtle ways. I was watching on Instagram and there was this minister in the street. I think it was like Mexico or somewhere, because they were speaking Spanish and there was translation. But the boy was like 6 years old and had never spoken before. And the minister touched his tongue and started casting out this spirit. And you could see the boy responding. And then all of a sudden, this boy's communicating with his mom, and she's just beside herself because if you can imagine dealing with
Mm.
a child who is nonverbal,
Yeah.
especially if you've dealt with autism or whatever, I don't want to demonize every situation, but I think we as parents have to become desperate to bring our kids to Jesus
Mhm.
and not just continue to suppress or go to the world looking for medical solutions. Yes, I understand that there's doctors that help significantly with children's issues or medical challenges, but ultimately, where we need to be bringing our kids is to the feet of Jesus.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you have to have all the faith in the world. Even Jesus had grace on this man who said, if you can, Jesus, would you? And Jesus was like, if I can, if you believe, anything is possible. Jesus kind of turned it on him. And he said, oh Lord, I do. But I love this about him. He wasn't a liar. He wasn't inauthentic. He wasn't just trying to say what he thought Jesus wanted to hear. He was like, I believe, but help my unbelief.
And I love that because it's like he wasn't even sure himself if this was ever going to come to a resolution because he's actually brought his child to other people to fix this problem and it just never worked. And this can be very discouraging for some of you guys out there who are dealing with children that It's been a constant battle. It's been
Yes.
months, it's been years, and you've been praying, you've been fasting, and it seems like nothing is changing. And so it's almost like you've settled in that this is going to be your life. But you have to believe. You have to believe that God's purpose and plan for your child is going to prevail. And you need to continue to pray for your child and continue believing that God has healing for them and restoration, and that the seed that you're sowing right now of prayer and intercession, I truly
Yes.
believe what I've experienced in my life is because of my mom praying, and she is an intercessor. And, I am more aware as a parent now that my children are growing older and as they are becoming more independent, how much more important my prayer is going to be, even when they don't hear me pray, is just to continue to cover them in prayer and believe that the seeds that I sow as a mother, it's going to take root, and their life is going to be transformed and renewed and protected. And they're going to experience deliverance and healing and God's presence and personal relationship with God, because we are very adamant about, this is the most important thing. If anything that I could give them
Yes.
physically or whatever, there's many things I can do, but the best gift that I can give them is having that personal relationship and hope that they place not on the world and whatever else that may come their way, but hope in Jesus Christ, knowing that He is the one who is able to do everything that above and beyond what we ever think or even ask. And we even acknowledge that with our children, whenever they do experience little triumphs and victories, like we have seen Toby pray for his bellyache, and it literally left instantly. And we have a video, and my mentor told me, you need to get a notebook and you need to write those things down, because whenever he's a teen and he's questioning and he has peer pressure from other people, he can pull out that notebook and he can be reassured of the times in his life that God has done these things for him. And I thought that that was so powerful, that you as a parent, you're there to echo God's miracles and wonders in your child's life, and for you to reassure them that God has a plan and a purpose for them, and that his purpose and plan will prevail in their life. If you're going to continue to be that parent that believes and puts their hope not, in your abilities to parent, but your hope and trust in God that He's going to give you wisdom and guidance for your specific child.
And that's what Jesus said at the end. These things can only come out through prayer and fasting.
Yeah.
And you've tried everything else. And there are certain things that do work. We've given you practical strategies. Consider what your children are eating. Consider the
Sleep
time that you're
cycles.
spending with
Yeah.
them. Recognize the little symptoms and don't just suppress them by using technology or other means, but really talk to your kids. Have open communication and encourage honest discussions with them. All of these are practical strategies, but you need these spiritual disciplines that become the foundation for their mental health going into adulthood. That when you are lowly, that let's put on some worship music. When you're depressed, let's start worshiping. Let's start imagining and reminding ourselves of what the Lord has done for us. And let's turn our fears into gratefulness and thinking about everything that we have, and teaching our kids these spiritual practices of prayer. Don't be anxious for anything, but in everything with prayer and supplication, reminding them that there is a spiritual solution as well as a practical one. But ultimately, all of the cares of this life that we are trying to cope with can only be resolved through a relationship with Jesus Christ,
Mhm.
and pointing them there. You know what that does? That is breaking generational curses and instituting generational blessings, values that they can pass on to their children and their children's children. And you can stop, you can be a cycle breaker today, no matter if you got this when you were growing up or not. You can begin these spiritual disciplines to instill these values into the next generation, and the buck can stop with you. The enemy, the torment, the even the spiritual strongholds have to end with you. You have more power over your children's circumstances than you think you do. Even the book of Numbers talks about it. Like, vows and commitments and words that have spoken over your children that they have even spoken, you can call them null and void. You have veto power over your children's life. So stop believing the lie of the enemy that you are helpless. You have the power, you have the authority. And so today, I pray that God would give you wisdom and strength and courage to confront these things head on, that your eyes would be opened to see some of the lies that you have bought into from the world, and you've overwhelmed your life to the point where you are not having enough time to help your kids emotionally regulate. I pray that God would give you financial guidance and wisdom, that the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth, would just reveal to you the root of whatever challenges your kids are facing, and that those generational curses would be broken now in the name of Jesus. I want you to take that boldness. And even after we close this podcast, I want you to begin to pray for your kids. Call their name out loud and begin to break those curses and speak life over them. And then start implementing some of these spiritual practices, as well as some of the practical things too. But the spiritual is the practical.
Yeah.
First the spiritual. What is happening in the natural world has been created by the spirit world. So tap into that eternal solution that will find manifestation in this real world. And if you need help from us, prayer of any kind, reach out, text us 864-428-7131. Let us know your challenge and how we can support you in prayer, and maybe some resources that we can send your way. God is faithful. I love this scripture, and I encourage you to go read it as well. Matthew chapter 9, such an incredible story, a lot that we can learn from it. Any final thoughts about this topic on marriage and mental health and kids?
Yeah, one of the things that Ryan sent me was a video of a woman, and she said, instead of complaining about laundry, God spoke to me about as I am folding laundry and I'm touching the clothing of that individual, whether it's my husband or my children, God prompted me to start praying for them. And I thought that that was so powerful that we don't have to necessarily just go into our closet room and start interceding 5, 6 hours. I think we can be practical as to we have tasks that we need to do. We need to do laundry. We need to clean. But instead of grumbling and complaining about those things, let's apply the spiritual. If you're feeling down, turn on the worship music and start declaring the word of God over yourself. And just even if it's not coming out of your mouth, just listening to that music is going to shift the atmosphere. And so you praying over your children's lives, whether you're touching their clothes, whether you're making up their bed, maybe getting ready for bed, having a prayer time with them. I know Toby loves that. He's like, if we forget to pray, he's like, you forgot to pray for me. Even if it's a short prayer. Kids remember that. Those are words that will stick true to them, even if it's a small, short prayer. And so don't forget don't forsake the small things that you're doing throughout the day, and integrate. Being a Christian is a lifestyle. It's not segmented. I'm doing here. I'm going to go to church here. I'm going to do this. It's a lifestyle. This is who we are. And so our children are part of that as well. So bring them on this journey.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this series. I want you to connect with us on social media at More Most Forever on Facebook, Instagram, moremostforever.com. There is marriage resources. You can become a partner, join our intentional marriage community, sign up, and attend our Forevermore getaway. All of that is there on our website. We're going to be starting a new series soon. I'm excited about it. We're going to be talking a little bit more about prayer and the role that prayer plays in your marriage. We've done a challenge before called Praying Your I Do's. We may do something similar to that as well coming up in the next month, so stay tuned. Pray for us. We are currently in the process of moving over the next week, so there's a lot that we're juggling as we discussed in our podcast today. So if you think about us, say a little prayer. And until next time, this has been a needed conversation.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.